Welcome to Look Behind the Look, the new podcast that examines iconic looks in film, television, music, and fashion history. I'm your host, Tiffany Bartok. Hello, and welcome to Look Behind the Look. I am back a little sooner than I expected because I just wanted to make sure that our guest's episode got out this week. This week am speaking to none other than Jeriana San Juan, who is the costume designer for the miniseries Halston on Netflix. I know it's limited series, but I say miniseries because I'm a Gen Xer. What can I say? Of course, Jeriana is Emmy nominated, and if you haven't seen Halston yet, it is a visual feast, and I don't know what you're waiting for if you haven't seen it already. Most people I know saw it the weekend that it came out. It's visually stunning. I wanted to make sure that we got this episode out just in case there's anybody who hadn't yet seen it and fully enjoyed Halston, and so they knew that they had to go do that right away. Jeriana's work in particular is really a sight to behold. It's a true honor to have spent time with Jeriana. Her time is very valuable. She is constantly working every single day, as all of our guests are, but she took a break to spend some time with me and share her creative process. And in particular, I loved hearing about the way she taught Ewing to sew. She is the epitome of integrity and authenticity. Halston is her most recent work, but you've seen her talent in The Plot Against America and The Get Down also. I could have listened to her speak about the joy her work brings her for hours. She's truly inspirational and just a breath of fresh air. Here is my conversation with Jeriana, our first costume designer on the series, by the way. So please enjoy this on YouTube to see the looks that we're referring to if you're able to, and enjoy.
My wife, she thinks you're a genius. I think that's a dangerous word. I think once you call yourself a genius, you stop growing.
Halston for your today. Halston for your everyday. Halston for your world.
You are the first costume designer that I am speaking to on this podcast, which I realize I usually talk to makeup and hair. And that was my first season because that's my world. And, so this is super exciting for my listeners because we're diving into the epitome of fashion right now. And so I can't think of a better place to begin in our costume design exploration with Halston, none other than Halston. So I don't know where to begin. Tell me everything. How did this beautiful project come into your life and how did it begin? I know Killer Films is the genesis of it, correct?
Yes, correct. Okay. Killer Films and Daniel Minahan, our director, who has been trying to make this as a movie for 20 years. So it was sort of this wonderful marriage between Killer Films and Ryan Murphy to finally sort of give birth to it and bring it to life on Netflix. And yeah, same. I really feel like I'm so grateful that this show was even thought of to be made, truly. I mean, before it even, when it came into my lap, I just thought, wow, this is the kind of show I want to watch.
Right.
And that's what really drew me to it. I mean, aside from the fact that it was Halston and I am, a Halston fan, I love his work. I love Elsa Pieretti's work. I love this particular time in fashion history. And I felt like it really offered so much and would be such a feast, for me to be able to design and such a gift. So I really was like a moth to a flame. I just really wanted to be a part of it. So I'm very grateful to have been invited to the party.
Right. And were you a guest at the party already at Netflix because of The Get Down? Or I noticed, your work, it just nails decades. Like this is the 70s. Like no, it's not a costume. You're truly living in, for example, The Get Down. You're truly living in the hip hop era. And, it's very authentic. So do you think that was the reason that you were bestowed with this job, or was it your love for Halston or relationships?
In an odd way, I think it was, 1940s Jewish community of the plot against America that really brought me here. um, uh, Dan, when I first met with Dan, this is really his child. This whole project is really his whole. It's all really his work and his tremendous amount of research that he's done. And when I met with Dan, we just had this most amazing meeting where we kind of gushed about Halston's work in particular. And I spoke to not only, my admiration for him as a designer, but also, of the world, and also, from a costume design perspective, how to sort of set his work apart, visually on the screen, because it is so timeless, and because the inherent nature of Halston's clothes is that they're so perceivably effortless and graceful and glamorous, and yet really hard to date. They sort of transcend period. So it sort of was like a conversation with him, and he is very well versed in his fashion knowledge, very savvy about all, not just Halston, but every designer. He really understands the world. So it was like a sort of equal parts gushing with him as another sort of fashion historian, appreciator, but then also talking with him, director, costume designer, and talking about how in this story we would illustrate these clothes and bring them to life as a character within the show, and be able to, I think, better enlighten for the world and serve as a fashion education for the world, how we would present his clothes and make them literally look. I said when I had this meeting, I sort of said, I want his first collection to look like, in caveman culture, the birth of the wheel.
Right.
Like they have to look like we are, this is an Edison inventing the light bulb. Right. So that's kind of how we sort of came to sort of the narrative of how we would present the clothes, and not only the collections that he would present, and how to better present Halston's creativity and the clothes as the vessel for that creativity, but to, kind of surround them and paint the rest of that canvas in such a way so that that your eyes just kind of popped to them.
The clothes are the star. Absolutely. And I felt all of that energy, and felt, the balance of him being truly free once you unleash those dresses, and they flow. And really the most positive aspects of his life were just the freedom in the clothing, and so beautiful, really extraordinary work. And how was it done? How did you do this magical? Did you recreate the looks? Did you buy vintage? How did you drape these clothes?
Well, it was a combination of everything you can imagine. I did, of course, try to source vintage. That was like my first, investigation into how we were going to manifest all these clothes. I sort of had already created this 125 page document that was sort of going to chart alongside the script how I wanted to present, the costumes and what looks I was aiming to do. And then after that part really went into, of course, there's always the inventive imagination part of this. And then there's the tactile, like, how are we going to physically come up with these clothes according to the shooting schedule?
Right. And the budget was probably... Mm-hmm.
And, Halston is one of those names that has been very highly sought after in the designer vintage world, by the people who know, and the people who want the original Roy Halston Froelich designed Halston pieces.
Yes.
And so that on its own was sort of like real investigation into trying to find vendors and people, collectors, and And then, of course, Halston, as it exists today, has inherited a certain archive that has lived, kind of trickled through the many iterations of Halston since leaving the brand. So there was a collection of clothes there that they were willing to loan, which was very helpful, which was like some archive pieces.
Where is that? Where is that archive?
It exists in New York.
Okay.
And then there were other pieces as well, which were, with some of the Halstonettes that they held on to. Chris Royer, who was a Halstonette, I became very friendly with, and she allowed me to access her archive.
Oh, wow.
And it was tremendous. I wasn't able to use many pieces that were archival pieces just because of the fragile nature of them. But I was able to at least study them, inside and out, feel them. Yeah. Understand the fabrics, understand the draping aspects, some of the signature bias elements, some of the special details in how he cut a collar, or, the double face, cashmeres that he used. I mean, really, it was I think that was an important part of unlocking it for me, was being able to touch and feel those clothes. And then, of course, Tiffany's was a wonderful partner in bringing to life all of the Elsa Pieretti jewelry.
They were a partner. Okay.
Yes, they were, I had to engage them very early on because it was just, there was no way to do it other than to do the real thing. I feel like we would lose the trust of the audience if the moment an Elsa Pieretti piece appeared on camera and it wasn't really Elsa Pieretti, we would be a laughingstock. So, so it's very important to get their partnership, and they were very lovely and giving, and the estate of Pieretti and Elsa, who was alive at the time when I
was going to ask about that. Yes.
And had to approve our use of her jewelry. So that was pretty tremendous. And, but yeah, I didn't get to use that much vintage. I wanted to always anchor everything in truth. That's sort of my, my thesis is sort of like
it really shows.
Yes. So when I was able to find something archival or real, for example, in the very first tie-dye collection, I was able to find a few of those tie-dye caftan pieces.
Oh, wow.
It was 3 in total that I ultimately got my hands on. And I sort of centered the color palette that I would invent for the rest of the collection on those 3 pieces, so that we could create something that sort of felt cohesive and still had, a story and a color palette and a particular energy to all of those clothes, that they all felt like, of one voice, of one time, of one collection.
Wow. And how did you have to teach Ewan to drape?
I did.
Because you were a consultant. You went to the ends of the earth for this project. We know that it was authentic to look at, but behind the scenes, you were also the consultant. So teaching, he's such an extraordinary actor. I'm certain that he wanted everything to be just so. And that must have been an incredible experience. What was that
absolutely. Like? It's such a unique way to be involved with the project, and I think that's part of what the appeal was very early on to me, was not only just, being the costume designer of this incredible show that inherently had incredible clothes, but to be a part of it and to be a part of its DNA, to even decide what, in the script, when it just said, he finds this fabric and drapes it into a dress, and then the fashion show begins. What's the fabric? What at this point is sort of pivotal in Halston's career? What would we present? How would we do it? What's the choreography to get from this discovery to draping to runway? That was sort of all, a very intimate part of the story to be involved with. And so I felt really privileged to be a part of that. And when I, would pitch these ideas and kind of go through the making of something myself and film it myself, for Dan, and we would sort of agree on some level of choreography, or maybe, how we would piece out the creation of something, and then walk through that after I had Dan's blessing, walk through that with Ewan. And and he was such a quick study. He's such a charming, wonderful, genuinely nice human being. And it made that all the more easy. That really felt like a partnership. And he was really attentive, would, be very clever about ways to sort of cheat certain things, and other things really wanted to be very meticulous to learn,
Of course.
how to do things. And so yeah, it was a really wonderful collaboration. And I have to, sort of kudos to Ewan for being so attentive and well studied and smart, really, because I think I sort of have been thinking, if you were playing Picasso, you would really want to know how to handle a paintbrush. It's the same kind of ideology. You would also want to know what's motivating you to paint,
Right.
And I think it's the same kind of thing for a fashion designer. It's sort of like, where is his eye looking as he's working? All of those little inherent natures to people who are, practitioners or artists of any level, their style, architects, makeup, hair, all of these things, they require a certain amount of precision in muscle memory that I think people don't necessarily clock or register, that it's far more than just having the vision. It's the actual choreography and muscle memory in how you handle, a tweezer or
Yes.
a pin, or just reference things in the mirror as you're working, because you're sort of looking at how things are coming together symmetrically or asymmetrically. I think all of those little nuances were things that we were able to share, and he was interested in them. And so I think that was really exciting for me to kind of, geek out on what I do, but with someone who's really interested in completely inhabiting that character. It was just a joy.
Oh, I love what you're saying, because why is it instantly relaxing for someone to just space out and just make this motion with an eyeshadow brush, or a hairdresser to just like relax instantly when they start hearing the sounds of the hairdryer and like the sewing machine.
When I see hair and makeup people work, when I see a hair person grab a barrel brush and with the other hand the blow dryer, and the way that they do that, and you can just tell their wrists just move kind of automatically, like kind of unconsciously in certain ways to do certain things. And those are little nuances that I don't understand. I would need a full lesson in just that, because even for an actor to recreate that or mimic that, it takes practice. It takes, for somebody who's actually doing it, they've been doing it for 20 plus years or however long, they don't think about it anymore. But it's really, I found it really interesting. I had to teach more than just Halston. I had to teach, other people playing designers.
Right. Of course.
Oscar de la Renta, for example, who came, and worked that day, and said, in his fitting and on the day he worked, for the two times really got to work together.
Whoa.
And it was sort of just like panicked face, like, well, how do we make you look like you've been doing this for years?
What are the key elements? Yes. And what were the key elements? It's a dance. I'm feeling a vibe like we need Halston the musical is what this is coming. That's the next step. That's the next installment. We've seen all the documentaries. Now we have the Netflix series, and now we need the musical. But I really did this, all of this work paid off with the choreography, because it's truly when I got a break from him I really did feel that it was saving his life. Designing was saving his life. Right. And that came through so much, and just the freedom in the clothing. And this is a question that I'm asking because I've always wondered. My best friend Troy Surratt is the biggest Halston fan, and so I've seen everything about Halston and learned everything through him, and everything that he has taught me about Halston showed in the show, especially. And I wondered how you nailed it: the weight of the fabric of the flowy dresses, which are my absolute favorites. That and the suits are the white suits. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Those two things are everything to me. And how did you what fabric did you use, or what technique did you use to recreate that? Because it really showed.
So it's interesting in particular, you may be referencing the Versailles fashion show.
Yes.
Where
yes.
we see those clothes move in slow motion, and you really get that sort of extra breath of things, flying through the air, and that sense of uninhibited dancing freedom. And that was a full on sort of, I was a scientist in the fitting room, manipulating different fabrics and seeing what would catch. I mean, I have a lot of background in dance. And designing for dance. So for me, it was sort of coming out of like, what were Ginger Rogers dresses made out of, and so it sort of started there. And then I started playing with some different, because the way his clothes were cut, they weren't always cut with like a million pleats or gathers or ways to kind of help fabric explode in that way. So, and then they were also on the bias. So I really had to kind of toy with different methods, play with, chiffon versus Georgette, and play with other elements too, which I incorporated, which were putting in some little weights in the hems, so that when dresses were able to fly out, that they would come right back down to where they began.
I see.
So each one kind of was handled differently, because I was playing with everything from, sort of tissue lame to clear sequin, chiffon, to, everything kind of works and manipulates differently. So there were many different things. Ultimately, they came together in that Versailles fashion show, different textiles, and each one I had to kind of sort of scientifically test differently. And I also took a lot of creative license in order to heighten that drama, because we all know you can have the best intentions in the world, but you create something and maybe they're going to shoot it differently. Yeah. And I knew that these dresses fly, but they tend to fly by the hem, and I knew we'd want to see faces. So I took a little artistic license and added quite a few capes to this collection. And I did that very much consciously, because I wanted to be able to have those beautiful, glamorous moments of fabric wafting and things flying, but also the gorgeous models' faces in there. So I added all these capes and did the same effects to them, so that we would really get that sense of just sort of like models just looking like, I think of these like 1930s images of like models in chiffon dresses underwater, where you have all of this chiffon kind of swirling by their faces. And so that's kind of the spawn of that idea.
Oh, it really was executed beautifully. I was so impressed. It was gorgeous and so real. And, I've seen a lot of Liza's. Huge fan of Liza. And I wanted to ask you about Liza, because this was truly, Troy and I were talking about this. This was the best Liza I've ever seen. It's usually just too much Liza. And she was really, a wonderful performance. But aside from that, the look was very convincing and not, it seemed like a regular person to me, who was a working actress. And, I really appreciated that.
Krista Rodriguez, who played Liza, and
brilliantly.
Such brilliant casting.
Yes.
She's incredible. I actually worked with her before. And when I found out it was her, I was just so excited, because she's just a dream. I mean, honestly, all of our cast on this show was a dream to work with. Everyone, wonderful collaborators, just incredible partnerships with every actor, because the clothes are so integral to the story, and also because the fashion, the sort of presentational level of everyone's clothes, or non-presentational, it's important to them as a character. It's important to that character. So all of the choices I really walked through with every actor intimately and, in detail, because I wanted them to understand what the motivation was behind every costume, so that so that, it just helped them in their, understanding of why they're wearing what they're wearing. I think literally that applies to everything across the board, whatever we're doing, whatever movie or TV show. But in this show in particular, I think it really helped our cast to connect to their outward appearance.
I think that is crucial and an often overlooked step, because people get caught up in the iconic, the icon status of a costume that they are documenting, right? And they just know how they felt when they saw it. And that you're talking about is what makes it real. And it's often overlooked. And I think that showed a lot, that the motivation.
That's great. I'm really happy to hear that. But no, it was really like, and also I have to say with Liza, right? Like Liza, like everybody's geeking out at Liza. That's how I felt. And,
right.
Grew up watching Liza, listening to Liza, loved Liza. And yet I had to really find a way to remove my personal infatuation in order to read her on the page as the character, as the person that she was, a full person, good, bad, and ugly. So that was something that I think Dan was really good about kind of policing, that we were never going to be Liza at an 11, that at all the time, that we would find levels, and that we would find places where she could be a little messier, or, wake up in rumpled pajamas in the middle of the night, or walk out of the limousine into Studio 54, at a 12, so that was really important, I think, to make her feel real and whole. And of course, I have to say, I had so many moments where we were doing a performance sequence, and of course they're all pre-recorded. She does them in a studio, that's all really Krista's voice.
Oh, wow.
And it's all her singing. I mean, she's this incredible voice, and manipulated it to sound more like Liza. I mean, really incredible actress. But we would be, watching this thing play out, and I'm just sitting there kind of holding my breath that nothing rips, and that all goes according to plan. But I had chills just listening to her voice in the playback and watching this thing play out, that it really felt like, we were getting very, a very good expression of Liza.
Yes, I loved it. I thought it was great, because yes, you always, when you hear Liza is coming to a theater near you or a TV screen near you, everybody gets, nervous, right? So I was really thinking that this was well done. And I was thrilled to see, this is a little tiny thing. I was thrilled to see my friend, actually, Sophie, Bette Midler's daughter. And I thought she was playing Bette at this. I was thought, when I first saw this scene, I thought she was like, when she was trying to get into Studio 54, I was like, look, honey, she's playing her mom trying to get into Studio 54. It was such a great look, that the hair.
Oh, Sophie was so fun to play with too, about, how would we make this girl, kind of just a little off center, that she doesn't get into Studio 54, but also kind of celebrate a lot of these glam elements, a lot of these late 70s, things that kind of were just like, a little bit more trend versus like things that people want to still do anymore,
Totally.
that didn't live past the 70s. Like those little headbands. We did one of those little braided headbands, and those
not timeless,
but still could be. Like, I would not put it past, the runways of 2022 showing us a headband or two.
Right.
Or a metallic high-waisted pleated pant, which I wouldn't be mad at.
Was the rabbit that she was wearing, was that Sergio Valente by any chance?
I feel like it was, actually. Okay. Very good eye. It was like a mixed rabbit fur.
Yep.
And it just felt a little something about it felt a little like kind of nouveau riche that I really appreciate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm a huge Sergio Valente fan. No, that was, if you're going to steal a scene, that was incredible. She was great. She was great and looked amazing. Was the Studio 54 stuff exhausting, fun, stressful, all of it?
All of it. It's always all of it wrapped into one. I mean, it's really hard, I think, in doing this show and doing anything where the volume is just so massive.
Mhm.
Because you just feel in those moments of production that it's just war. It feels like warfare. It feels like
Right.
equal parts, creative vessels open, channeling, creating at such a high volume, but also war because you're doing it against a production schedule. We were shooting those elements, between 5 p.m. and 6 a.m. We were, I was prepping during the day. So I would go home, take a nap, and then have the day to sort of, prepare for the upcoming work or get ready for that, for shooting that night. And it just was a blaze. And I find myself sort of needing to find a quiet moment here and there and appreciate what I'm being privileged to be able to do, and not, get too blinded by the fact that like, just, more, less here, this, there, that, there, shop this, vintage this, style this, but just take a moment to like get my little third eye open and just appreciate. And I think I learned that actually on the Get Down, because
That was an exhaustive production.
that was
right?
not a small job.
Yeah.
And again, the sort of expectation levels were just the absolute highest. And I just kind of was in some level in survival just to kind of continue to produce on a TV's very demanding, TV schedules, filming schedules can be very, very, very demanding. And that was certainly the case and was on Halston. And I had a moment on the Get Down where we were sort of in the middle of everything towards the end of our shooting schedule, doing huge, sequences. And we had a Saturday day where Vogue was going to come to shoot a story, and Annie Leibovitz was shooting it, and she was shooting some of the costumes. And I, had dressed Yahya Abdul Mateen, who was playing Cadillac, in his Cadillac suit, which was like a whole
thing,
romantic story. I could talk about that suit for hours.
Yes.
And Annie was shooting, and Baz was there, and I just had a moment where I just went to another part of the studio we were shooting, and I just sort of pinched myself because I just thought, who the F am I? Here I am, daughter of a Cuban immigrant who broke her back, but my whole family works very hard, has always worked very hard to afford me the opportunities to get an education, to allow me to follow my dreams, to be pursuing this creative career that was sort of, not, it's, you had your bets, you don't know what's going to happen. You just know that you believe in what you do and you work really hard at it. And who the hell am I that I've gotten into this spot? And it felt like a pinch me moment. And I have those very often. And I don't take anything that I do for granted. I really work hard at everything I do. I believe very strongly and have a lot of conviction in the design process and what I can bring to the table creatively. But I feel incredibly lucky that whatever channels, whatever little choices or big choices that I've made in my life, that they've led me here. And I'm not going to waste not 1 minute of it. Because it really feels like a 1 in a million chance to even be able to have had the opportunity to work with Baz Luhrmann, to have had the opportunity to create this Halston story. And I am just so, I'm so grateful really to be in this position, to even have had this opportunity. And, and I don't want to waste any moment. And I don't want to waste not one moment of anybody's time who's watching to not be overjoyed with what they're looking at.
What a beautiful sentiment. Oh my God. I can feel that generosity in your work, and you being the authentic person that you are, and everything that you just said right now, all of that shows in your beautiful work. And that's surely to be rewarded. I feel that you grounding yourself in that moment is probably why you'll have a legacy and, just miles and miles and miles of work, because you can take the time to ground yourself and appreciate. And that doesn't come very often.
No, and it's a learned practice. I mean, that was a moment where I thought, check myself, remember where you came from, remember what you want. It's not easy to remember to do that as well, when you're just sort of like going on and on and on. And I've now, it's more of it's a trained practice now. And I think it's important. I think it's important for all those people who are inspiring, or aspiring, I should say, in their careers, and, even in places that you don't necessarily want to be. I've done lots of shows, between you and me and everyone listening and watching that I do not, romantically just feel compelled to do.
So what do you do? Yeah. But,
I still had the opportunity and said yes. And I said yes to a lot and everything that came my way. I said yes to, because I wanted to just start to make those roads. Spielberg is not my uncle. So I don't have him on speed dial. I'd love to, but I just had to make those inroads. And also, the more that you do, the more you learn. Mm-hmm. Right? I've learned from so many of my own mistakes. I've learned from so many of my own successes. I've learned from watching those around me. Everything is a learning process. I learned so much on Halston, truly, about my own method of working, that I just became more conscious that, I guess this is the way I operate. I guess I need to think in this pattern.
That's great. Mm-hmm.
I think there's so many things like that. You learn from what ultimately becomes important on screen. I learned from
not being precious over this thing because they're probably not gonna.
I learned from, and it was another project that actually even educated me to know that they'd want to shoot up by the face. They wouldn't just shoot a floating piece of fabric, behind the scrim on stage. They'd want to get a face in there. So add the capes, that it all is, it's all learning every moment.
Data for the download.
Yeah.
Well, I know that this Emmy coming up is yours. And if anybody's asking me, okay. And I'm so excited. What's next for you?
So I'm doing a project right now, which I'm in production on, and
that you probably can't talk about yet.
I cannot talk about it. I just will say it's something that no one expects me to do.
Oh, I love. Is it aliens? You're like, how did you know it's aliens? No.
And that's why I'm doing it, because
nobody
I wanted to do something that will allow me to continue to learn, and something that scares me a little. I think I love things that scare me a little, because it feels like you're, standing, at the foot of Mount Olympus, and here we go.
Right. And for sure, career-wise and career advice-wise, what do you say to people who are like the 70s store, the fashion store is open for you, right? You're going to get people that want you to do this again, like the Elsa Pieretti story, which of course would be amazing. But what do you do to strengthen your career and have that longevity that you're going to have?
Right. Well, there's nothing I love more than sitting in an interview, and I know any person with a beating heart will relate to this. Sitting in an interview and they go, well, you've not done something like this before. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's that like, Hello. Yeah, I'm trying to get the experience.
Yes.
I need one door to open so I can do something like this. And then I will have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know so many people who have been in this position, various different careers and backgrounds. And so I think it's just always important to me to try to keep a diverse style of work and different types of projects. There are things that I absolutely will always want to do. I will always want to do clothes that dance. I love musicals. Musicals are what inspired me to be a costume designer.
Really? Which ones?
Oh my gosh. I loved American in Paris.
Oh, yeah.
I loved Singing in the Rain. What I had was, for some reason, my grandmother had a copy of That's Entertainment, which was like a compilation.
I have it on VHS.
Both parts?
I was a musical theater major, so I was the nerd. I was like a library. Everybody came over.
You know the red shoes?
Of course.
I love. So literally so I would just watch this compilation and That's Entertainment. And I watched it over and over and over again. My grandmother would tell me about who all the movie stars were and the ones she loved. And my grandmother was also a seamstress, taught me to sew, taught me, everything. I really, all of those little buds in my brain, she helped bloom because she taught me that all of these little creative thoughts I had in my head, I could draw. And that was, my mother was also an artist and taught me that, and then how to create them. And my grandmother would show me how to turn fabric into this dress in my mind. And that really was the spawn of it all. And so I will always want to do musicals. I will always want to do things that are joyous stories, because to me, that's when my creativity really opens up, is in celebration and joy. But I also love things that scare me, and I love things I don't really know, but feel compelled to do. And I mean, I guess that's all I can tell you about this project right now, is that the story in what I'm doing is something I am extremely passionate about and feel sort of politically aligned with. And it just feels like the right thing for me to do.
My brain is like, I know what it is. I can't wait to have you back to talk about it. I'm like, no, but I cannot thank you enough for talking to me today. I know how busy you are, and you probably have to go to the mystery job this very day. So I will let you go on with your day there in LA. And I loved talking to you, and I can't wait for you to win the Emmy. And I can't wait for Halston the musical. Those two things.
Okay, great.
Bye, Jeriana.
Bye. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And there you have it. Thanks for listening, everyone. And please let me know what you thought of Halston. I want to hear from all of you always. You know that. Next week, I can't even contain my excitement. We are finally going to have our V. Neal episode ready. This was an epic effort, you guys. This woman's career is insane, and you're going to hear all about it. And so get ready to take a deep look into the legendary career of this incredible woman as she talks about Tim Burton and Johnny Depp and Michael Keaton, Robin Williams, and, as always, so much more. Thanks, guys. Look Behind the Look is a Vinyl Foot production, written by me, your host, Tiffany Bartok, produced by Jace Bartok, edited by Nicole Tucker. If you're interested in learning more, find our video version on the YouTube channel Look Behind the Look podcast. There you can see rare photos and clips from our guests. And please follow us on Twitter at LookBehindPod and Instagram at LookBehindTheLook. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe. And tell your friends and spread the word. You can subscribe to us on iTunes or any podcatcher of your choice. Thanks for listening to Look Behind the Look.